As you might notice, I am doing a solo act today. Fred is still on the road. He's traveling. So he said he would be able to join us online, just not live with it. He'll be listening and commenting, but not he won't be on screen. So evidently he couldn't find a private enough place to do it. So that's one of the things when you're traveling. You can't control the environment all the time. Good morning, Christy. Glad to see you jump on there. Um, Anyways, as I was saying, we're going to do kind of an open discussion here. So this is really for you. We do have some more guests coming up in the future, but after chatting with, or at least reading some comments and soliciting some suggestions, decided to have guests on maybe twice a month and do open discussions like this twice a month because you, our viewers, seem to prefer it that way with a little bit of both. Find a happy medium there. But first, a little housekeeping. As we always say, we're shadow banned on Facebook, which we know we are. I didn't try it this morning, but pretty soon we're going to be able to start going live to our Patriot Pulse podcast page on Facebook. Right now, we're still we're still going to our Two Guys Drinking Coffee Facebook page because Facebook, in their infinite wisdom, says that you cannot go live to a page you just created until after 60 days. So we're playing by their rules because we have no choice. But help us overcome the algorithms and everything else that's censoring us and shadow banning us. If you're watching us on Facebook, click share, click like. If you're watching us on Rumble, which we are live on Rumble and we're live on X and a couple of others, subscribe to our page. Doesn't cost you anything. You'll be notified when new content is posted. So, and after we do this live broadcast, we do upload the recorded session to about 10, 15 other platforms. So you can find us just about anywhere on social media. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but we no longer have a section where we break out and thank our sponsors, so on and so forth. At least with this new podcast format, for now, I've decided not to do sponsors. Don't get me wrong. If we have people coming out and saying, companies wanting to sponsor us, we will certainly consider that. But for right now, this is being done for you, not for advertising purposes. My own personal businesses do sponsor us, but I won't even bring those up again. I just do that as kind of advertising promotion for my business. But one way you can help us with this podcast and you can support this podcast and help us stay on the air is by making a donation to the podcast itself. We've tried to make that easy. If you go to paypal.me, so it'd be www.paypal.me/Patriot Pulse Podcast, you can click on the link to make a donation online. If you'd rather not do it with a credit or debit card, I certainly understand that. I'm not always thrilled about putting my credit card online, but if you'd rather, you can actually send a check, make it out to Jim Tingley. You can send it to Jim Tingley, P.O. Box 957, Bradford, PA 16701. These donations just help us stay on the air. We have expenses like websites and our StreamYard platform costs money, and just a number of things that are a monthly expense to us. So if there's any way you can help us out, we'd appreciate it. And that's enough about that I'll say. So as I said, and this is a discussion today, and we got my two favorite Kellys in the world, Kelly from Washington State and Kelly from Warren, jumped on this morning. So good morning and welcome to you two. I'm going to take a sip of my chocolate milk. This is not one guy drinking chocolate milk. I love chocolate milk, especially that one. Anyways, we're going to have a little discussion this morning. And the first item that has been in the news has been the big, beautiful bill, H.R. 1, which is 1,181 pages of incredibly difficult reading. And my very first reaction to that was they screwed the seniors again, because Trump, and don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing on Trump. I mean, this is the Congress doing this. But one of the promises that he made on the campaign trail, if you'll remember, is no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. So this bill does have some wording in there that there's no tax on tips, and wording that there will be no tax on overtime, or at least a portion of the overtime. I don't know exactly how that works. But instead of being no tax on Social Security, there is some kind of a deduction that people receiving Social Security can take. But you got to understand, deductions are there if you itemize your tax return, you can take these deductions. If not, they're wrapped up into the standard deduction. And quite frankly, even though we have a couple businesses and we do these are S corp businesses, when it comes to our personal taxes, because we have got to a stage in our life that we don't have enough deductions to itemize our personal taxes. The S corp filters down into a line item on our 1040, but we just take, according to our accountant anyway, we take the standard deduction. So I guess what that means to me, and I guess I'm going to need a little bit more clarification, but what that means to me is those people that are receiving Social Security and do not itemize get screwed. They don't get a darn thing out of this. They still pay taxes on their Social Security. And if you take the standard deduction, you're not going to be itemizing, so you're not going to be able to get any Social Security deduction that they propose. Now, this is just in the House, mind you, okay? And what I did was I reached out to the two senators in Pennsylvania. For me, that is Dave McCormick and Fetterman. First, John Fetterman. One Republican, one Democrat. And what I did ask them to do in my email to them was to, in their version, because you know how this goes. The House creates a version of a bill, then it goes to the Senate, then the Senate makes changes and makes recommendations, so on and so forth, but it goes back and forth, and it goes back to the House, and then the final draft is presented to the president for his signature. All right. So the Senate now, even though the House passed the bill, the Senate has the ability to make suggestions. So what I did was I reached out to my two senators, Dave McCormick and John Fetterman, and I didn't mince words. I said, once again, senior citizens are getting screwed. And I implored them to work to getting the Social Security, no taxes on social, excuse me, I can't talk this morning. No taxes on Social Security put into the Senate version, which again will go back to the House. So there's still a chance that we could get it in there. But I'll tell you what, if we the people, I don't know how many millions of retirement age citizens are in this country, but I'm sure they're in the tens of millions or more. If we reach out to each one of our senators we may have an impact on this. And if you're like me and don't like the fact that we're being taxed on money that was taken from us without our consent through the Ponzi scheme the government created called Social Security. And so now we're being taxed on money we were taxed on. Double taxation. Uh, doesn't exactly sit well with me, never has. But if we can get this through, if we can get our senators, if we can get the Senate to push this thing through, which, I hope there's a chance for this. We still have a Republican majority in the Senate. I don't think the Democrats would ever agree to it, but we have a chance anyway. And perhaps we'll come out this thing when HR 1, or the big beautiful bill, as Trump calls it, when that goes to the president's desk for signature, perhaps it will have no tax on Social Security. So anyways, let me see if there's any other notes. I was just kind of winging it there. I want to see if, some conservative Republicans, particularly from the House Freedom Caucus, expressed concerns about the bill's deficit impact, estimated at $3.72 trillion, or for, over a decade, over a 10-year period. Well, if you want to save some money, take out some extra spending in there and give the seniors a break for a change. Ralph Norman demanded deeper spending cuts. I agree with that. We still have way too much spending. And one of the things that just annoys the crap out of me is when they talk about Social Security being an entitlement. They're always talking about entitlements, and excuse the air fingers quotes, but quite frankly, that's bull. We paid into a system that we had no choice in. If we wanted to work, taxes were taken out. So we were forced to pay into a system that we were promised would give us a retirement. You can't even say it's an income. It's a retirement benefit. I doubt if anybody can really live solely on Social Security unless they're really frugal. But that was promised to us, and it's not an entitlement. We paid into it. I still work. I still work every day, and I've been paying in Social Security since I was, since my first job. Can't remember when that was, but so now they're calling it, it's an entitlement, and we should talk about, cutting entitlements. Well, leave the damn Social Security alone. And hey, good morning, Diane and Cindy. It's good to see you on board. And again, this is an open discussion. If this is hitting a nerve, or anything we talk about is hitting a nerve with you, please feel free to make a comment online. We're monitoring the comments on Facebook. And if you have anything, we'll put it up there. So anyways, again, I'm urging, this goes along with what I say every week. We, the people, are the true rulers of this country. We are the masters. The elected officials and the unelected bureaucracy are the servants. They work for us. Our taxes pay their salaries. It's important to remind them of that, to tell them, hey, you are not Lord and Master over us. You have to listen to us. You represent us in Congress. You represent us, whether it's at the state level or the national level. You do our bidding, not what you think is right. You do what the people that you represent think is right. So I implore all of you, I urge you, it doesn't take a lot. If you go to any of your state or federal representatives, go to their website, just look it up. It's you can find it very easily. And they always have a contact me or contact us tab on there. You go in there and you fill out your name and your address, and they want the address so they can make sure that you are in their district. Because trust me, I've reached out to other senators across the country, and I always get a reply saying, "Thank you for a reply, but since you are not in our district, blah blah blah, please contact your own senator or representative." But it makes, it's worth the effort to let other ones know too, but especially yours. Get a hold of your senator, let them know what you're thinking. And it's not just on any issue whatsoever. If you see it in the news, if you see it in the newspaper, if you hear about it and you want clarification on it, reach out to them. If you want to make your opinion known to them, reach out to them. But the most important, it may take, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes out of your day. Well, in our constitutional republic, if we want to maintain that, it's important for we the people to be engaged in every aspect of it, because that's how we got to where we are today. And I'll include that myself. It was only when Obama came into the national scene and told us how he was going to fundamentally change this country that I woke up and finally getting involved. I mean, I have been involved with local politics before, but on a national level and in a party level, it was only when Obama threatened and carried through a lot of his promise on changing this country. So when we don't do anything, when we don't say anything, when we stay quiet, when we stay apathetic, they just do whatever the hell they want to do. And then we're left holding the bag. Let's see here. If you have the fax or phone number, Christy's asking. I don't have it right on my screen here, but I will put it in the notes afterwards. But if you just go into a search engine on your browser, and for example, if you're in Pennsylvania, just type in Senator John Fetterman or Senator Dave McCormick, it's going to bring you the result close to the top of the page for their Senate, page, their official Senate page. It was after this big, beautiful bill that came out that I found out about Social Security not being included. So to get a hold of our representative was a moot point at that. They had already passed it. So if it goes back to them with changes from the Senate, then I will reach out to my representative as well. So Kelly said she switched parties when Obama was running. I hope it was switching parties from Democrat to Republican. And I think it would be, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth there, Kelly. But I'll tell you what, it's funny. My mom, growing up Catholics, especially during the John F. Kennedy era, Catholics were, I would say, majority of them were Democrats. And I remember when I ran for school board back in the 1990, I think it was. I talked my mother into well, I didn't have to talk hard because I was her baby boy, but she changed her registration to Republican so she could vote for me in the primary. And I did win, by the way. I was the top vote getter that particular election cycle, and that I spent 4 years I spent one term on the school board. That was enough for me. And I always said after that is unless you're willing to stand up and spend, run for public office or be in a public office like that, you really, especially school boards take a lot of grief. Rightfully so, a lot of times. I will admit that from being on there. And I tried to be the voice of dissension most of the time when I was on. But they do take a lot of crap. And if you're not willing to run, maybe you need to be more understanding for the local politicians or the local school board, but it doesn't let them off the hook. I still attend occasional school board meetings. I still attend city council meetings and let my voice be known, especially when there's a issue coming up. The most recent one on the school board is when they were um, going to do all that DEI inclusion and letting boys and girls restrooms and sports and all of that. They were going to codify that, make it part of their school policy. About 200 people showed up to that school board meeting, and we were very vocal, and they voted it down. So Christy also says on here she's going to Trump directly on X. That's another good idea. You want to go to Trump. I'm sure. Well, I won't say I'm sure, but he's a pretty busy guy. I would imagine he has staff. I would like to know how many of these comments directly go to Trump. I don't know for sure. But it is one more way to get your voice known out there. So that's it for the big beautiful bill. Keep an eye on what the Senate is going to do. And again, reach out to your senator. I don't care if you're in Pennsylvania or Kelly out in Washington. If your senators are considering this bill, reach out to them and anybody in between. So the next topic I have on our list. Did you realize, and I don't know if a lot of people understand this, I was watching a podcast and they were talking about World War III. And we think of World War III being, they're still throwing this around in the mainstream media, especially when they want to complain about Trump trying to start World War III, or calling him a warmonger, even though he's out there trying to create peace or bring peace about between, India and Pakistan and Ukraine and Russia and the Houthis and Israel and Gaza, the Palestinians. But when it comes to World War III, I think most of us think that it's a nuclear exchange or the bombs are going to be flying. If it's not on us in our country, maybe it's in Europe, maybe it's in the Middle East, but that will be World War III. They'll draw all the countries in, sides will be formed, and just like it was in World War II and World War I, where you had, good guys against the bad guys. And fortunately for those two times, the good guys won, in my opinion. Although there's a lot to be learned from history in that area too. But I don't know if you realize it's been going on all around us and we never knew it until now. We are actually right in the middle of World War III. Now I'm going to tell you this right off the bat. I'm stating my opinions here. You can feel free to agree or disagree with me, and please, if you have other ideas, let us know. Let me know. I'll put them on the screen. But what I've read and what I've learned from other truthers, if you will, that we are in the middle of World War III. And why do I say that? Let me just ask a couple questions. What happens in a war? What would we see if World War III were breaking out all around us? Let me think. We would probably be seeing people die, wouldn't we? I mean, that's what happens in war. People die. Well, there are people dying all over this country or all over this world. There are people dying in this country as a result of warfare being inflicted on us. I'm going to put this one just to make my point. Christy made a good point here. Let me show it on the screen. Again, Trump has his hands full. he certainly is at odds with Putin and Netanyahu. So whether he gets any reads his X tweets to him or not, I don't know. But anyways, back to the topic. People die in war. What have we seen over the last 4 years? How many millions have died from the jab? VAERS itself, if you look up official data from the federal government through the VAERS, the reporting structure for vaccine-related injuries, they list the number at about 400 and some odd thousand. Well, it's a voluntary reporting system, and even the government suggests that the numbers reported to VAERS is about 10%. And even if you go as high as 30%, but anywhere from 10 to 30% of the actual numbers. So that means that the number of people that have died from the jab could be anywhere from 1.2 million to 4 million people. I would suggest that that's probably, let me think, 4 million people. That's more than died in World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and I think even the Middle East wars, the Afghanistan and Iraq put together. I would call that a war. Okay. What else happens? Well, in a war, you always have propaganda and counterintelligence going on. You have what we call now gaslighting. Well, that term's been around for a long time, but there's propaganda. In other words, whatever side you're on. Think about in World War II, there was a woman that was on the radio called Tokyo Rose, and she was, somehow pirated onto radio frequencies that GIs over in the Pacific theater could listen to, and she was trying to kill the morale of the GIs fighting World War II. Well, we're subject to the same kind of propaganda and counterintelligence. We hear what the powers that be want us to hear, especially on mainstream media. That's why I no longer really listen to mainstream media, but we only hear the official narrative. If they want you to think Putin's bad, which I would agree, but I would agree based on my own what I've observed, not what they tell me. But if they want you to think one person's bad, the other person's good, this cause is bad, the other cause is good, they're going to pump that into you till you start believing it. That's why it's important to do your own research, make your own decisions, draw your own conclusions before you just go, because it is all, you could even go to the point, and I know this, we've talked about this before, but there are still people that swear that will go to their grave telling you that vaccines are safe and effective, and there's no problem with them, and they'll roll up their sleeve and they'll take as many as the government wants them to take, and they'll be proud of it, and they'll admonish you for not doing it. Okay. That's the kind of brainwashing and propaganda that we're dealing with. And that's what they do in a war. Okay. So next point. Warfare also takes on many forms, doesn't it? It's not just bombs. It's not just rockets going off and falling on our neighborhoods. It's also biological. There's biological warfare. There's electronic warfare. It's censorship. Censorship's a part of warfare. Electronic, where certain messages can't get out, even if you wanted them to. It's electronic in that there are things like 5G that are part of the warfare, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there are many facets to war. There's also subversive attacks on the population, whether it be things being sprayed in the air. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But things that don't appear to be attacks really are part of the war. We're being attacked. Think about this. We're being attacked by big pharma and the medical establishment causing. Think about this. What's happened not only to the people that have got the jabs, but also people that are subjected to whatever they're doing in the environment. They're destroying our immune systems, and they're sterilizing future generations. And now even Canada. I just read this. I haven't had a lot of time to do research on this, but Canada government officials said they are planning on aerosolizing the vaccinations. So in other words, they're going to spray into the air the mRNA vaccines so that, and this is their words, okay? I'm not making this up. So they're going to do this via geoengineering sprays to attack, and put this in quotes, the vaccine hesitant. You got that? Vaccine hesitant. So if you have made a conscientious decision that you don't want this, we'll call it just this material, because we don't, whether you agree that it's poison or not, or whether you think it's safe and effective or not, we have still, or should have, a right to decide what goes into our body. But evidently, the Canadian government, which if they start there, it's not going to be long before it's in Europe, and they're even going to be trying it in this country. And Bill Gates is a huge proponent of this. Bill Gates is one of the ones that's behind what they're doing in Canada. And we all know he's a eugenicist anyway. But if we no longer have autonomy over our own body, we are being we're considered the enemy because we are vaccine hesitant, and therefore we need to be forced into the vaccines according to them. And that's one of the ways they're going to do it. And they're also going to talk about putting vaccines into our food products. So let me see what we got some comments coming on here. Let me get my cursor over here. From Kelly, a doctor said, if you're a young woman wanting to have a family, do not marry a man who has been vaccinated against C19. Sperm count has been drastically reduced. That's true. And as a matter of fact, I'll go one step further on that, Kelly. Doctors have proven, which I follow many doctors that are not, they're not anti-vaxxers, they're truthers. And not only that, but the ability for women to carry babies to term has been greatly reduced. The ability to have fertilization occur has been greatly reduced, whether that's because of low sperm count or problems with the egg inside of the woman. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but it is. That's why I say the sterilization of future generations. So we, the people, and let's see here, Jim, my buddy Jim, I'm glad to see you're on the podcast. God bless you. I should have sent you a link and had you come on today. Geoengineering mRNA spray, Seal 1, goes out conquering and to conquer. It's never ending. I will agree with that. We talked, and this goes back to two guys drinking coffee. And my gosh, Jim, this was back when we first started this. And actually, when we were in that Bible study that you started on the book of Revelation, we both agreed, and I think we still do agree, that Seal 1 was basically the white coats coming to get us. It was pharmakia. It was they're the first white horse was riding. They're getting us through that pharmakia, which is from the Greek. But and we can talk about the other horses, four horsemen of the apocalypse, but definitely we're both in agreement that the first horse is not only riding but galloping, and we are becoming victims of it. Kelly, many miscarriages during first few years. Yes, you're right. As a matter of fact, do you remember how they were doing the propaganda campaign where people would on camera take the shot and they would never show it on the mainstream media, but we had clips coming out where people would take the shot and they drop over. Some of them dropped over dead right there on camera. And there are women that, in some nurses, it says, oh, this is safe and effective. And look at me, I'm taking the jab, I'm taking the injection, only to find out these same women a day later miscarried their baby. You know, they were pregnant. They said everything's good. Well, unfortunately, they lost their baby. Now they would say, well, that's just coincidence. You can't prove that was because of the injection. You know, they say, correlation is not causality, something like that. Just because just because I took the jab yesterday doesn't mean it caused my miscarriage today. Where every other clear thinking human being on the planet would say, you had a perfectly healthy pregnancy on this day, you took the jab on this day, the next day you had a miscarriage. Or you were perfectly healthy this day, you took the jab, and 2 days later you died of a massive heart attack because of something called myocarditis. So you can't deny these things, although they do, but you can't deny. And I would suggest again that this is all part of what happens in a war. People die, people get killed. So we're also being attacked by our own military. And I'm sure if you're a listener to this podcast, you've heard the term DARPA before, which is a military operation. I don't know what the acronym stands for, DARPA. I'd have to look that up. I've just forgotten it. But DARPA, they are the ones that supposedly and reportedly are responsible for the geoengineering going on in skies all across our country. Nobody is immune to this. And the common term for this is chemtrails. And I still have people in my own family, I'm sorry to say, friends that swear. I have a hard time even having discussions about this because they swear, oh, this is nothing to be concerned about. These are just natural contrails being produced when the jet flies. Because as we all know, a contrail is condensation. It's really short for a condensation trail. When, it's where the planes fly at 30,000 feet or 35,000 feet, it's very cold up there. So the hot exhaust from the jet engines cause condensation. But under a normal contrail, as we all know, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, a normal contrail or condensation trail emitted, after the engines will dissipate very quickly. And it'll more or less just follow the plane because it's dissipating as the plane goes on. Whereas in geoengineering, if you look up in the skies, sometimes it's cloudy here today, so you can't see them, but you'll almost look like a basket weave pattern. They're back and forth, crisscrossing, and they don't dissipate. What they do is they actually spread out. And pretty soon, all as you see is man-made chemtrails creating clouds of chemicals in the air. Now, the proponents of this would have you believe that they are doing this to combat global warming. Where have we heard that before? Oh, Al Gore, our buddy, that promised us 20, 30 years ago that we were going to be underwater within 10 years at the coast, that sea levels were rising, and that we were all going to burn up and crops would fail in 10 years because our country was being inundated with CO2, causing terrible greenhouse effects. It was going to kill us all. Well, we've been listening to this propaganda for 40 years. Nothing's happened. There's pictures of coastlines that are supposed to have been underground or underwater, and the picture from 40 years ago doesn't look any different than the picture today. So tell me how that's happened. But we have people that will defend the action because it's stopping us from global warming. In addition, the DARPA, how about, we've talked about this before, HAARP. It's not the harp that you play with the strings. HAARP. This is I would call it part of the electronic warfare that is up in Alaska. And this is emitting high frequency radio waves into the atmosphere. And it is also being done under the umbrella of DARPA, but also as research, and many universities are taking part in this. But it has been suggested that the HAARP, the electromagnetic frequencies emitted from this array of antennas up there, it's a huge, I don't know how many acres it is, but it's acres of antennas, can cause differences in air pressure variance. As a matter of fact, they also talk about doing it in combination with 5G towers throughout the country. I'll go as far as to say, and I think this is in my notes later, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but do you remember Hurricane Helene that came up through the Gulf of Mexico and into the Carolinas? When was the last time you ever heard of a hurricane strengthening as it came on shore, as it went over land? Never. I'll tell you that right now. Never. It doesn't do that. It's against all the laws of nature. It loses its source for warm water, which keeps the hurricane going. It loses its power. It dissipates as it goes in more further inland. Well, this actually stayed strong all the way up into the Carolinas. And there are people, actually, there was videos on Dane Wigington's website, geoengineeringwatch.org, that showed 5G towers, or at least that's what they're speculating, 5G towers flaring off, emitting energy all around this, like it was steering the storm northward. So between HAARP and between what they're doing with that, it's all part of the war. We are in World War III. Okay, we are. That's all there is to it. You just believe it or not, that's what it is. So we're also, being attacked by the geoengineering sprays in other ways. It's not just what they claim is the dimming of the sun. As a matter of fact, there's a movie that Dane Wigington produced, and it's on his website, geoengineeringwatch.org, called The Dimming. If you haven't watched it, I encourage you to do so. But it's not just about dimming the sun to lower the temperature on Earth, but it's also about spraying poisons into our skies that poisons that we're breathing every day. Jim and I, since you're on here, Jim, I'll mention here that we were standing chatting on the porch at church Sunday, and talking about the the chemtrails that we saw in the sky that morning. And he made mention that he's going to be working in his on his homestead. And I said, yeah, I'm going home and mow the lawn. We're going to be breathing all this stuff in. Well, these poisons, they don't just stay up in the atmosphere. They have to come down eventually. And what happens is we breathe them. The animals that our wildlife breathes them. It goes into our water system. So we in Bradford here, I'll tell you what, our water, we're fortunate. We have a couple of very, very good reservoirs that supply us with water. Now it does go through filtration plants that just hyperchlorinate it. So there's a whole nother issue there, but they aren't covered with a dome. So all this spraying going on in around Bradford area, especially where our reservoirs are, all that poison is going to filter down into our water system. And quite frankly, I don't know this for sure. Maybe I should get a hold of Steve Disney and ask him, head of the water department, does the filtration, I know the filtration filters out things like Giardia and other little protozoa, and the hyperchlorination kills any other little bacteria supposedly that gets through the filtration, but it's not filtering out the chemicals that are in it. It's not filtering out. That's quite frankly why we have two water filtration systems in our house, to provide us with potable water that we drink and we cook with. You have to do those things because our water is being poisoned, and it poisons our crops. Think about this. Rain comes down, goes into the ground, has all these poisons in it. Our crops bring water up through their root systems, and all these poisons go into the crops. And it's also, if it doesn't outright kill the vegetation, we're ultimately eating it if it's going into the crops like corn or wheat or anything else that we're growing. Excuse me a second. Oh, I love that chocolate milk. So let me see what kind of comments we have here before I keep going on here. Hey, George, good to see you on here. I got to get my cursor back over to this screen here. Harold, once they make an airborne virus or vaccine, it ends up in every country, as we share the same oxygen as the world turns. And it is not chemical. Then it is not chemical warfare. I don't understand that, but you're right, George. I mean, it's not just necessarily as from the way, let's say, smoke from a forest fire or smoke from a volcano, that can quickly circumnavigate the globe as the world turns. And I'm not talking about the soap opera, but as the world turns, anything that's in our atmosphere gets spread around the world. And we saw that with Mount St. Helens when it erupted. We saw that with the volcanoes in Iceland when they erupted. It affected people in Europe. Well, if they're spraying stuff over the United States, it could be affecting people in London or Paris or anywhere like that quickly. So let's see here. Kelly, they dim the skies and the sunlight does not get to the plants like it should, causing less plant growth. That's absolutely true. So they're controlling our food supply. And what is that? That's another method of warfare, because they're screwing with our food supply. Christy said she lost me for 20 minutes. I don't know. Did anybody else lose the broadcast? I didn't see any glitches on my end, but so let me get back to my notes here. Let me add in here 5G towers. I know they promote 5G 5G cell signals. It's a good way to take this little device and to watch your favorite movie, because now you're going to be able to stream it without any buffering or anything else. So yay 5G, yay 5G. Let's go to 6G. No, 5G is a frequency almost on the microwave level, Plus, they can use it to, and I'm not going to get down this rabbit hole because I didn't prepare for this, but there are some people that say the jab contains electronic components, self-assembling nanotechnology that once it gets into your body, and it can be affected by 5G signals. That's all I'll say about that for today. Probably get kicked off of wherever I'm on. We're on YouTube, by the way, under the Patriot Pulse podcast. So we're on YouTube until we get kicked. This is where I get us kicked off of YouTube. We were permanently banned. Two guys drinking coffee were permanently banned for YouTube. They wouldn't even let us recreate another account. So 5G is not your friend, and it's part of, in my opinion, and again, all of these things are my opinion, World War III. Weather modification, I already talked about that. Directing and intensifying storms. How about causing crop killing droughts? Or Jim and I were talking over the weekend, it has been so wet in the Bradford area, people have been not able to get their gardens started because it's just too wet to till the ground. I was amazed. I took a trip up to Buffalo yesterday and saw that some of the fields were finally plowed over. Were tilled up, and it looks like they were planted. But this weather has not been good for us, and this is an unusually wet spring for us in this area. So anyways, I keep losing my cursor between my two screens here. So we're being attacked by a government that, if not completely complicit in all this, they turn a blind eye and refuse to stop the attacks. I will say this: some people have said, "Well, President Trump is doing a good job. He's doing some things he promised, but I want to know, why hasn't he done an executive order to absolutely put a moratorium on any kind of geoengineering going on in the country?" He could do that. I know some states have taken it up themselves, Florida being one, but there are ways that they're getting around that. Doug Mastriano is introducing a bill, which I'm sure won't go past the House because the House is Democratic controlled in Pennsylvania. But he's introduced a bill that, you can't spray stuff into the atmosphere. But why hasn't the federal government done it? Why haven't they completely banned? And with all due respect to RFK Jr., he's making inroads and taking the C-19 jab off the childhood schedule. But why don't we ban it altogether? We know that it is not a vaccine. We know that it is not safe and effective. We know that it kills people. We know that it vaccine injures people. It should be a no-brainer. Make it illegal. Take it off the market. But no, Big Pharma and the congressmen and senators and everybody else they own are keeping us under the thumb of Big Pharma. So we are being attacked by our own government. And again, I think some of it's they're complicit. If a senator or a congressman is taking money from Big Pharma and they're then voting on things that help Big Pharma, then they are complicit and they should be out of there. They should be, I know we got to primary them because they get in because, again, people are apathetic. That's just the way it goes. So I'm going to ask you the question. Does this look like war to you? Because it does to me. People are dying. People are dying in our country. People are dying in other countries because of missiles. They're dying because of jabs. They're dying because of poisons. What's it going to take for us to finally realize that we need to stop this killing and call it what it is, World War III. Okay? I'll get off my soapbox there. I know it's almost 10 o'clock here. Got a few other things to cover, but want to know what you think based on this is it's incredulous. I'm incredulous. I guess that's the word I want to use. Biden in his their announcement that he has, advanced prostate cancer, and by golly, that just must have came on because he was perfectly fit as a fiddle a year ago. He was perfectly healthy, passed all of his fun. As a matter of fact, I can't remember if it was Jen Psaki, Carrot Top, or the other curly-haired lady, said that she has a hard time keeping up with him around the White House. A hard time doing what? Taking naps? Well, it turns out that and I don't know if he's going for the sympathy card now or what, but it turns out he has advanced prostate cancer that has infiltrated into his bones. Now, I don't wish anybody harm. I really don't. I despise Joe Biden. I think he is the epitome of everything that's wrong in politics. And if he dies from this, I'll be honest, I'm not going to shed a tear. I really won't. I don't wish him to die, but I will not be upset. But what does that tell you about all the lies that this country has been fed the last 4 years? What does that tell you about if he was in such bad health, and we know his cognitive ability was questionable when the coup started, but it got worse as his illegal term progressed. Who was running the government? Some say it was Obama and his cronies, which I could see being perfectly feasible. All right. Obama came out himself, and he's on camera saying that he would be okay if he could find somebody to be in that position, but that he could run things as a third term from the background. And I know I kind of didn't even paraphrase that properly, but you get my point. Is that he was all right with that. As a matter of fact, he would want to be able to run that and just have a puppet out front that was doing his bidding. And I think Biden was that perfect puppet. And since his mental faculties were declining so rapidly, it was very easy to do that. And his staff around him were complicit in it. And when are they going to be brought to account on this? When is something going to happen to them? And what about those auto pen signatures on all those pardons and all the other things? I mean, this guy, was, well, I don't think he really had the nuclear codes because they would never trust him with them. But this guy was supposed to be the leader of the free world, and he couldn't even put two sentences together properly. And on a related note, his recent diagnosis of advanced prostate cancer probably had something to do with his cognitive decline. And why didn't his doctors say something about it? So the doctors that came out and lied to the public, are they ever going to be held accountable? Are his staff that was around him that lied to the public, are they going to be held accountable? No, because nobody in politics is ever held accountable. So anyways, this is another one. This goes along, and I know I'm running over now. This is just exactly 10 o'clock. But there is a new term. It's called VAIDS, VAIDS. All right. And immediately, if you search that, they're going to say conspiracy theory. They're going to say this is not true. But what this is vaccine-induced AIDS. All right. Now, what is AIDS? AIDS is it's acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Okay. So VAIDS then becomes vaccine acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So when a person got the AIDS virus, or it turned into AIDS, their disease turned into AIDS, what happened is their immune system was destroyed. Immune deficiency syndrome. And it wasn't the people that died of AIDS didn't die of AIDS. They usually died of cancers or other ailments that were brought on because they had no immune system left. Okay. So, what do we see with the side effects of the injection? We see immune systems being compromised. We see, um, turbo cancers. And I know that's another, they call that conspiracy theory too. But we see all of that coming about because of the jab. So, what happens when you have AIDS? Your immune system is destroyed. What happens if you're vaccine injured like this through the jab? Your immune system is destroyed. And I can even go as far as to say not even turbo cancers, but my wife and I know people that have taken the jabs and the boosters, and they're always sick. They're always getting a cold. If they're by anybody that even sneezes, they're down for 2 or 3 days getting over what ailment they have. They're in, and it's beyond, you don't want to rub salt in the wound, so you don't push this in their face, but their immune system is compromised. That's why they're getting sick so often. And some people that may have already compromised immune systems and then have this introduced in their body, no wonder they're getting, things like it, being diagnosed after being healthy, being diagnosed with stage 4 cancers. This is not normal. This is not normal. We're still under attack. This is all part of the attack. This is all part of World War III. Okay. And I hope this administration, I hope Bobby Kennedy Jr. does the right things. I hope Trump does the right things, but we are under attack, and we, the people, have to be the ones to fight back. We, the people, have to be the ones to take control of our country again. We have to be involved at every level of government. We can't be complacent, because if we're complacent, we're part of the problem. If we're complacent and we don't do anything, or we don't try to fight it, or we don't try to stop the carnage, then who else do we, if we can't blame them, we got to blame ourselves, because we didn't do anything about it. Am I saying my efforts are making a difference? I can't tell you that. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to stop doing it. I'm not going to stop writing to my representatives. I'm not going to stop campaigning for people I think will make a difference. And I'm not going to stop campaigning against people that I think are hurting us. So that's where I am with the government. That's where I am with involvement. I had probably about another hour's worth of notes here, but it is after 10 o'clock. And I think it's about time we wrap this up here. I do want to bring over here a couple other comments here. Kelly says, whomever was in charge of the auto pen was in charge. Biden probably didn't even know. Mike Johnson even talked of Biden not realizing what he had signed. That's true. In some instances, I think even on camera, a reporter might have asked him about something he signed, and he didn't realize what they were talking about. So, that's just, let's see what else we got here. Christy says Trump is a tool. God is the answer. You're right. We are failing miserably as a country in turning to him, my opinion. I'll tell you what, we have said this on this podcast and on Two Guys Drinking Coffee. There's only one solution to this, and this is a spiritual solution, because we are in a spiritual war. um, the enemy has a lot of minions working for him, but the ultimate enemy is Satan himself. He has his demons, he has his minions on this planet that are causing all sorts of havoc, but it's a spiritual war, and it is Satan that is calling the shots. So our only hope, as Christy says, is in God himself. And he's the one that's going to bring either an end to this on earth, or he's going to bring an end to earth, and we'll hope the believers will be with him in heaven. Either way, I'm okay with it. But it is his fight. We just got to be his instruments here on this planet and do his will. So, and Kelly, I agree with this. Shame on Jill. She should have never allowed him to run. Yeah, well, she was infatuated with the glamour of being first lady. So, anyways, on the note that Christy brought to us with God, let's close this thing out in prayer. As I said before, I'm not real comfortable or a good person to have in charge of corporate prayer, but I do my best. So let's go to the Lord in prayer as we close our podcast today. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time that we spent together. We thank you for the people that are listening, the people that are awake in the world. Lord, I ask a blessing upon all those within the hearing of my voice today, whether it be live or recorded later. I pray a hedge of protection around all these people. Lord, I would pray that I pray for our government. And that's hard to do sometimes because we know there are very many evil actors in our government. But I pray that, number one, they would see the light, that you would somehow get through to them and show them the errors of their ways, turn them around in the right direction, turn them around to bringing us back to you as a country, first of all, and then our country back to the constitutional republic that it was designed as and that you ordained. I believe this country, when the founding fathers put this together, when they fought the Revolutionary War, this was a God ordained country and government, and we were beholden to you as Lord and sovereign of it all. In the last 250 years, we have gone so far astray, and we're reaping that. We are finding out now what happens when we turn our back on God, when we no longer go to you first, when we go to government, or when we go to other people, or when we go to celebrities. We need to go to you first, and that's what we want to do. So I thank you for this time, and I thank you for my listeners here today, and we hold everything up to you, Lord, because it is all about you. And we feel in this effort of a podcast and all the other people that are doing similar things that we are doing your will to try to get this information out to the people. So we ask you to bless this and bless everyone listening, and we ask all this in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. And again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for the comments on here, and we will see you next week. Don't know what next week will bring. I'm trying to bring another guest on, but we'll see. But for now, have a wonderful day, and be blessed. And Jim, if you're still watching, I'm trusting that you're saying be a blessing to others. So